Okay, so let's get started. We're going to be taking a look at working with a custom layout that I'm providing within our training course folder. This layout is going to be what I use throughout all the training tutorials in our G5 training course. It's going to save you a tremendous amount of time having to set up and configure custom layout pages. Be able to open this up and immediately begin calibrating and tuning and also following along with our tutorials. All right, first thing we're going to do here is learn where we can find the actual layout file and then open it up and then start taking a look at what the layout has to offer. So right now I have a blank layout. I'm going to go up here into the top under layout and then we'll go here to load layout. Now I have the course folder saved onto my desktop. Unfortunately, at the time of filming right now, I haven't uploaded all of the tutorials and developed the course on the website. But when you actually navigate on the website, you'll find the course library. Within the course library, the very first icon at the top will be the G5 course packet. When you download that, it'll be a zip file. Unzip the file, have a folder, and within the folder, the layout will exist and you can go ahead and open that up. Let's go and take a look at that right here. So under desktop, I'm going to go to the G5 course packet. Again, that's what you're going to download and unzip from the website. So click in here. And then we're going to have a couple different layouts to choose from. Now, my layout I'm working with here is going to be this G4X Master Layout 2024. This is the latest layout that I've developed. So I'm going to be working with this. Now, my screen resolution is pretty large here at 3360 by 2100. I do have smaller or lower resolution options that you can choose from. Now, one thing I want to point out, we have master logging option, and then we have layout. The layout is for the actual calibrating and tuning portion within the PC Link software. The logging options here are going to be for the logging side of things in the software. They're going to display certain features or functions. So I'm going to be using this particular layout, but you can work with these other layouts here. They may not be as up to date, but you'll find that the screen resolution may fit a little bit better and you can always tweak and adjust those layouts as you like. All right, let's go ahead and open this particular option here and click open. And now we'll find that that layout is going to open here in just a second. So the first thing we're going to find, if we go all the way over here, we have these toggle arrows that allow us to scroll through all the different pages, or we can go here to layout and actually click on the page we'd like to see. So we have some options there, but let's scroll all the way to the left using our left arrow key if you're finding yourself not centered here within the window. In the basics page, I have structured this and set this up in what I feel is the most logical format and layout in the software. So this is going to allow you to see things as quick as possible and being able to access certain tables, certain parameters that are going to be paired together. So for example, here under the basics, we have our basic configuration settings for our link. We'll find we have our configurations, the number of cylinders, the firing order, what type of fuel strategy we'll be working with, our injector setup. We have the ignition setup here, our coil dwell, injector data. Everything is located here for the essentials in getting things programmed, which is why I labeled the page here called Basics. You'll also find in here, we have our statistics channel that we can take a look at, and we'll be talking about how this works and what this represents in other training tutorials, but the statistics is something that you likely want to pop in and see. It gives you essentially your max values for certain channels or just a ongoing tab of how many times things like the rev limiter hit. But this is going to be all of the pertinent sensor information. So we can see we have a whole bunch of different data sets in here. These are runtime channels that are associated, things like our injector data or our basic sensor information. So we have engine speed, map pressure, engine coolant temp, intake air temp, TPS, and then we also have barrel pressure, battery voltage, fuel pressure. These are all things that I want to see when I get started with the link, just as a basic checksum, making sure that the basic channels, the basic runtime channels are in order. And then we do also have a couple additional things, such as looking at our injector data, being able to see how the actual injector pulse width's made up, where it's coming from. So our fuel model plus the injector data, we can break that down here. Again, this is all things that we generally want to take a look at, found in one location under the basics window. And that's going to be, again, going through the layout here as we walk through these various pages. I've grouped together things that make sense. So when you're looking for that specific task for tuning, such as fuel tuning, for example here, you'll click in this particular page and everything you need to access will be found in the page. Let's jump over here to cam crank. This is going to be setting up our trigger 1, trigger 2, which is our crank and our cam. Program all of our information here. We have a parameters list that's going to tell us information related to the cam and crank, and then a time plot down here giving us some more information. Plus we also have this runtime values in our screen here that are associated to cam and crank. So everything in here is what we need to access and see to set up and work with our cam and crank sensors. We'll have separate tutorials. Again, each window will essentially be breaking things down in future training modules. So this is just an overview right now, so don't get panicked if you're looking at the information and this all looks unfamiliar and you don't know what's going on. We will be covering this pretty heavily. All right, so analog inputs, digital inputs, these are all associated to various different types of inputs that we'll be setting up. Things like coolant temperature, map pressure sensor, throttle position, exhaust lambda sensor, all can be found in analog inputs. Digital inputs could be things like our flex fuel sensor or maybe steering pressure sensor, switches, things of that nature can be configured in this particular window. We can also see the status of those channels as they're being set up within our runtime values here. Same is going to go for the analog inputs. We can see that all the pertinent sensor data in here, as well as general purpose inputs that we can find, configure, and testing in here. So this window is pretty complete and it has all the information that we need. Taking a look here at outputs. So outputs are going to be things like our cooling fan, or things like our TAC output, or check engine light, or a relay to control the fuel pump. We program everything within the output window here. Now there's a lot more outputs available on the link, but this is the more common things that we want to access, and being able to take a look at the status or states. We can take a look right here. These are all runtime values for associated outputs. It gives us a real quick way we can see what's going on and being able to troubleshoot things with outputs, making sure they're actually working correctly. All right, CAN bus window. This is related to doing CAN bus programming. So if you're setting up your CAN keypad, for example, this is exactly what you want to see and to configure and set everything up. We're going to have a separate tutorial talking about and setting up our CAN keypad. So this window is for setting up CAN bus information, specifically the CAN keypad. Mixture map is going to be, or the mixture or table here. This is going to allow us to do an auto tune type function on our main fuel table. Everything in this window is related to using the mixture map option in the calibration process. Let's go over here to fuel. This is everything related to doing our programming within our fuel model. So we have our main fuel table, we have our runtime values that we can see in real time. We'd have a target air fuel table, injection timing table if we have these set up and programmed and working in our calibration file. And then down below here, we have a time plot that allows us to see what's going on as we're calibrating and tuning, and then the associated parameters list that as we scroll through the time plot, it displays these channels and data. This is super invaluable for calibrating and tuning, working in your fuel model with your link, so we'll definitely gonna be using this heavily. Closed loop fuel, this is everything related to closed loop fueling correction. Right now it's turned off, so these tables aren't populated, but it gives us access to everything we need in order to successfully implement the closed loop fueling corrections that we essentially track to our desired lambda target as we're calibrating and tuning. Next, we have our fuel trim. This is things like our pre-crank prime pulse, cranking fuel, post-start fuel, warm-up enrichment fuel, intake air temp compensation. So all of that is going to be found in here. And again, we have parameters list that pairs to the time plot. So if we're going back and let's say looking and reviewing a cold start or warm start, we can see how these trims are being applied and successfully go in and edit them. Accel decel. This is everything related to our acceleration enrichment, as well as our overrun fuel cut, which is known as decel fuel cut, where we shut off the injector and lift throttle. So programming everything makes sense in here. Time plot, parameters list. This allows you to data log and see how the acceleration enrichment is performing. Definitely a very valuable page. Spark tuning. This is everything related to our spark timing, where we want to command the spark event to happen to create the combustion event within the engine cycle. So looking at this, we have compensation tables here. We have our main table. We have the ability to turn on or off our trim tables, which is our air temp and coolant temp trim. We have a time plot so we can see exactly what's going on with the spark timing. We have commanded timing in our table here. Then we have modifiers that could be altering the spark timing, like knock control or one of these compensation tables. Using the time plot in conjunction with the parameter list here allows us to go through and track and trace what's going on so we can get an idea of what our spark timing is doing. The knock control window is specific for setting up and working in the knock control. We'll be working with this heavily, but this allows you to set and turn on the knock sensor, track how the knock is performing, set the threshold so that the link knows what's real or false knock, and all the other parameters are associated to tuning and working in the knock control. 45D tables, these are extra compensation tables that can add or subtract fuel or add or subtract spark timing against the normal fuel and spark timing calculations going on in the link. There's various reasons why we might want to implement 4 and 5D tables, but everything you need to access in terms of the programming to turn the tables on and the configuration settings and accessing the actual tables all can be found within this window. Cylinder trims. This is going to be for fuel and spark. This allows you to go in and individually tune a cylinder, and we can do that in a 3-dimensional table. So we can add, let's say, on a RB26 engine, the cylinders 5 and 6 are notorious for actually getting lean. So we generally want to go in and add additional fueling on the back cylinders. We can do that with our cylinder trims. We can pull a little spark timing out, and we can add some fuel to keep the engine extra conservative and safe so the engine doesn't get damaged. Idle control, this is everything related to programming our idle control, whether we're doing open or closed loop idle control. Again, we have a time plot, we have a parameters list, so we can play a log back and see what's going on with our idle control and really get that sorted out. We also have here in the middle runtime channels that are all associated to idle control, and we easily can figure out what's going on as we're calibrating and tuning with this. Safety, this is going to be relating to setting up our main rev limiter, boost cut, oil pressure protection, lambda protection, so lean protection, a lot of different things found in the window here. The time plot and the parameters list allows you to see what, if any, limiter is in play at any given time. This is really important because a lot of times if you're calibrating and tuning, you might start running into misfiring and having the engine kind of rev limit as you're getting up into load. This will tell you if there's a safety feature on very, very quickly. And this is a very, very important window. Let's move over here. So we have a bunch more windows to go. VSS gear. This is for setting up vehicle speed or wheel speed sensors and making sure that they're calibrated correctly. It's also allowing us in this the parameter window here to set up our gear ratio table so the link can accurately track your gear position. Time plot allows us to see the things that we need in order to calibrate our speed sensors or the gear, as well as the parameters associated to that. Let's move over here. There's a closed and open loop boost. So we see there's 2 different windows. This is if you're turbocharged, you're trying to control boost with a 3 or 4 port solenoid. This allows you to set your target, your wastegate duty cycle, and then access any other compensation or modifier tables for boost control, all found within the window here. So this works extremely well. Now, if we scroll all the way over here to the right, we're going to find that we have a time plot plus a bunch of different parameters list. This allows us to track exactly what's going on with the boost control. We can see if we're trying to tune closed loop, for example, how the closed loop corrections are being applied and what we can do to actually change and update tables so that the control isn't too laggy or too responsive, so it's tracking just right. Again, this is something we're definitely going to be heavily using. Open loop is the same thing as closed loop. It just has a little bit less parameters in here to work with. Second boost is using a boost control solenoid on something like blow-off valve control and actually creating a controlled boost leak. We'll be talking about this in another tutorial. There's the VVT. This is for your variable valve timing control. Now, what's on here is just an inlet cam only. If you have something with both inlet and exhaust cams, well, this window would have to be adjusted, or you have to create another window for an exhaust control. This was everything related to our intake control and setting up our VVT or variable valve timing. Drive-by-wire encompasses everything for looking at and setting up our e-throttle or drive-by-wire. Blink's going to be calling it e-throttle. Everything in here is what we need to access in order to test it and set up our PIDs and making sure that our target is set correctly so that when we're giving a certain pedal input, we're getting a certain plate movement. So that pedal to plate relationship is controlled virtually through our tables in here. Launch control, this would be everything related to launch control, rolling anti-lag as well. So we can configure all of that within this window. Time plot parameters list allows us to see exactly what's going on, so definitely very valuable. Traction control would be for slip-based traction control, looking at our driven and undriven wheel speeds and figuring out if we want the link to take effect and start to cut spark or cut fuel, depending on how we have things set up in here, in order to manage the wheel spin so we don't go into too excessive a wheel spin. Gear cut takes a look at setting up your gear shift cut for strain gauge or for a sequential style shifter with paddles. It could be a couple of different options here with the link. So this is going to allow us to see everything and set everything up for a gear shift cut. Flex fuel allows us to set up and configure a flex fuel based tune. Working with a flex fuel sensor, this is going to have our 2 lambda tables, 2 spark timing tables, our blend ratio tables, and then setting up our other details here in order to make sure that the flex fuel is implemented properly. VTEC fuel and VTEC spark are specific for a VTEC equipped Honda engine, where we have 2 fuel tables and 2 spark timing tables that switch between each other based on VTEC activation, so low cam or high cam, VTEC off or VTEC on. We have a fuel table, spark timing table for either, so we can see what both of these look like. Stage injection, this is if you are doing a staged fuel injection setup. Drag cars would have stage injection, RX-7s would use a stage style injection, so we'll be talking about this. Virtual math, this is going to be setting up a virtual channel that we can use as a runtime value for either logging, or we can bring a virtual channel into a table for doing actual calibrating and tuning. I'll go over some examples of this, but we can access all the information we need in order to set up a virtual math style channel. There's a knock normalized. This is a little bit different than the normal knock control. This allows us to essentially scale out our knock threshold, where it's telling the link what's real knock or false knock. It's going to allow us to scale that out based on the rate of change in our throttle position, map pressure, or load. We can actually change the threshold so that if we have a tip-in event, throttle tip-in event, it allows the threshold to have more flexibility so it doesn't trigger false knock counts as we're driving around. Power management is going to be using the power management feature. This is an alternate way to control the power output out of the engine compared to the traction control. So we'll talk about how this all works. And then finally down here is alternator control. This is only used on some very specific applications where the ECU is controlling the alternator for allowing everything to run and function, so you get proper charging voltage. There's likely to be more windows that I haven't added in here. I don't have one specifically for nitrous tuning, which is something that the G5 has added in there, so I have some nitrous control, and there are a couple additional software features that will be G5 specific, so I'm probably going to be adding on to this. And by the time you download the course packet, I'll have all of that populated, so when you load the layout into your software, it's going to automatically have all the additional windows. So if you keep scrolling to the right, you're likely to find more windows to be able to calibrate and to populate. Okay, basic tutorial, just doing the overview. We're going to break down what all this means and across all the pages as we go through the training modules. But just wanted to do an intro video to this course layout because it is what we're going to be using throughout the entire training course, and making sure that you know where to locate it and how to load it into your software so you can follow along with the training modules. Okay, that's going to wrap it up here. Any comment or questions on anything we cover in this training tutorial, post your comment or questions into the video comment section or into the private forum. I'll see you guys now in our future training tutorials.
Thanks for checking out our teaser clip. If you want to see the rest of this video and more than 500 hours of current EFI training we have to offer, make sure you click right here. If you want to go and check out more teaser clips from this training course, click here. And you don't want to miss any of the videos we're going to be releasing on this channel, so make sure you subscribe and click here. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys later.